I hope that things are going well for you today. I want to look at a passage in Genesis 39. So the last one I posted was a sermon and an audio, and it was on Genesis 37. And so this kind of leaves off after that story where Jacob is surrounded by his sons, all of them but Benjamin, and they use a garment to deceive their father, and they lie to him. And one of the big things there is that they were trying to get rid of the problem. And in their eyes, Joseph was the problem. I mean, they were jealous of him, they hated him, they just wanted him gone. But you see, the root of their problem was not physical Joseph, it was a heart issue. And now, pushing Joseph away, they're going to find out very quickly that this is not going to fix their problem, because they've let bitterness and jealousy and hatred into their hearts. They've let all these influences, actually influences of the devil, into their hearts, and they're going to be living with this until they deal with this. Here in Genesis 39, the story takes a turn, and we see that Joseph arrives in Egypt, and there's a man who buys him because now he's a slave, and so Potiphar is his name, and we know this story. One of the big things I want to point out in this story is there's a couple of verses here that are of interest. One thing that I want to point out too is the tunic. You know, we see that Joseph had the coat of many colors, and I believe that was kind of his first stage of his life. It kind of deals with, you know, he has, there's rejection there, there's hatred there, there's jealousy there. It's kind of symbolizing that season of his life. You know, he's going through all these things. Here, he has a tunic again and a robe. And you see that in verse 12. And I would think this is kind of the robe of slavery, you know, hardship, servanthood, neglection, rejection, all these things again in this season of his life. And I believe this robe kind of symbolizes that, you know, the robe of slavery. The other one was a robe of favoritism. But what I really want to focus on is the fact that, and it's something that I believe we so many times forget and we so many times need, because as Christians, we can say the words, you know, God, where are you in this? You know, God, why are you, you know, abandoning me in this thing that I'm going through? Or we look at world events, even around us today, and we see all the stuff that is going on. You see the flooding, you see the locusts, you see the fires, you see, you watch world events and the wars going on and the rumors of wars. And we are truly living in a time that the Bible describes as the last days. I believe that very firmly. And we are closer than ever to the end than we've ever been, obviously. But it is true. We are, when you look around, when you turn on your television, you can be like, God, where are you in all of this? You know, where's the hope? You know, things just look so bleak. But I think God most times shows up most powerfully when things are going terribly wrong. You know, when we have everything, you know, we want and there's not really much need in our lives, we don't have much of a need for God. Or we actually do, but we think we don't. And, you know, things go well. We have lots of money. We're seem to be, you know, well set in our ways. And, you know, it is interesting to notice that God so many times shows up powerfully when we are in a very low spots, and you know, when we acknowledge we need him, when we cry out to him. We see here Joseph, he gets dropped off in Egypt and he's brought up by a man named Potiphar. It says in verses 2, And Jehovah was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man in the house of his Egyptian master. It says that God was with Joseph. You know, God, back in those days, gods many times of the people were very localized. So, you know, you'd have the god of the Philistines, or the god of the Moabites, or the god of, you know, they had many gods, but many times they'd have a god of the valley, or the god of the hills, the god of the weather, which was Baal, would have been the god of weather. There's different, right, different gods that they had for different locations. But your God, typically in those days, your God would not travel with you. You'd need to, you know, if you had an idol, you take him with, but usually it was more a localized thing. And so this is the difference of Almighty God. He is not just a local God, or in this district. There's an interesting story in the Old Testament where one of the enemies of Israel attacks them, and they said, well, we only lost because their God is the God of the valley, so let's attack him in the hills. And then they attack him in the hills. This must be the God of the hills. We got to go to the plain. And wherever they went, they were defeated. And again, here God goes with Joseph. And you know, the thing that Joseph has to hang on to in this difficult time, and we will find that ourselves when we actually go through difficult times, the only thing that we really can hang on to in those times is God. And I mean, this is what all that Joseph has left. He has God left. He lost absolutely everything. He, you know, even the clothes that he has are slave clothes. They were given to him. And he has no memory. All that he has left is what is in his head, what he brought there. But otherwise, he had nothing. Everything was taken. And so everything but God, right? He had God with him. And actually, it says here that Jehovah was with Joseph. And not only once does it say that. It says in verses 3, and his master saw that Jehovah was with him. And then in verses 5 it says, Jehovah blessed the Egyptian house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Jehovah was on all that he had in the house, in the field. In verse 21 it says again, and Jehovah was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave favor to him. Going through this, I want to just encourage you that, you know, God is always with you. You are going to go through difficult times. It's not, you know, if they happen, they are going to happen. Life is full of difficulty. There will always be things that come our way where we just, you know, as Christians, we can rely on God. Sometimes I wonder, how do people do it who are not believers, who do not have the Lord? You know, where do they turn? And many times they turn to the very wrong thing, and which will bring them down a path of further destruction. I heard a quote yesterday, a fact. I think it's 800,000 people every year commit suicide. I mean, that's a huge number, 800,000 people. That's almost 1 million people a year committing suicide. And yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot that they don't even know of. So that's kind of a number that they know. So very sad statistic out there. And those are people, those are lives. And we see here that God, he is with those who, you know, who love him. He doesn't leave us abandoned and alone. It's kind of like with Jacob. It says in back, I covered it a little bit ago. It says, except for God, I would have left with nothing. You know, like with Laban, except for God. Because God was with him and was with him wherever he went. Here we see that also, just like Jacob and Laban. Remember, Laban saw that God was with Jacob. And so he realized that everything was blessed that he had because Jacob was working for him. Here it's the same thing. It says the master saw that God was with Joseph. And so he put him in charge of everything. And as Joseph is in charge of everything, you have to realize that again, when Satan realizes that there's a calling on your life, and when he realizes, he doesn't really quite know, but he realizes that, there's something, God has a plan with this person. He's going to use him in some way. I don't know exactly what yet, but I'm going to try and destroy that, is what the enemy says. And so wherever God then puts favor, and wherever he is molding and moving a person in a specific direction, and maybe you as well, the enemy is going to look at that and say, how can I, destroy God's path for this person? What can I do to try and bring this person down? And so there will be attacks. And we see that here. We see that Potiphar's wife, she is going to try to bring Joseph down. And one other thing to realize is the enemy, he has tactics. He will try one thing, but he's never short of ideas. If this one fails, he will try something else. And we're going to see that here in probably the next video, because it's getting a little long. So be blessed and encouraged.